Well, I guess kind of begin to introduce myself a little bit more is, at New Trier, I'm one of the heaviest users of Canvas and one of our biggest abusers of technology in the building. Because of this, I have basically changed the way I teach and everything I've done. If I look back to 12 years ago when the way I used to teach, I'm actually kind of ashamed of what I did and where I'm at in comparison. And the classroom that you walk into is kind of what I want to show you to start off with. This is what my classroom actually looks like on a daily basis. I teach an engineering program where my class is primarily about mechanical engineering. So I teach a multitude of things. Students are constantly applying everything we're talking about, either through labs, through single individual projects, through pair projects, through three, four-man groups, all the way up to what I call the big project, which we'll talk about a little bit, which is the entire class leading its own project from beginning to end, and all I am is an observer and guide to the process that they go through. So my perspective that I kind of look at right now is going to digital. My classroom is 100% paperless. And so I do a lot of grading digitally. And when I started really looking at my grading and what I was doing is these are the things that are important to me. And I started really looking back and trying to figure out what the best way to grade to get the information out to the students. And so when I look at this stuff and I begin to really think about it, I get it to basically coming down to two categories, whether it's a student side or the teacher side. If my side's right, the student side should be really easy to come by. What's kind of interesting here is you see the one hanging out in the center for hours of work. That's what grading was to me before going through everything and actually getting to where I'm at. Now, hours of work has turned into a little bit of time on the computer and more time with my students. I've eliminated the need to answer simple questions to the students. We're at the point now where students, instead of coming back to argue for a point or go for a point or trying to get that extra percentage, they want to understand in detail why in this circumstance was this incorrect? Why is it correct in this circumstance? And we have a much deeper conversation instead of having the simple surface conversations that we have. Because engineering, there's very rarely ever a right answer. It's all about situational awareness and understanding how you actually got there. So there's a bunch of different assignments. I'm going to show you how I grade, but I want to give you an overview of what assignments are typically given in my class. I do have pure math assignments where students go home, basically practice the formulas we've talked about, reading through the situations, trying to draw out whatever they're trying to show their work all the way through. We end up also having notes, whether it's an assignment that they're going to turn back into me, whether it's a PowerPoint that they're filling out. We have flipped videos in our curriculum, depending on the unit, depending on what I'm actually trying to cover. We have full-blown labs where students build a lab assignment, they test and prove out a theory, and so they have to document what that looks like. We have full-blown design proposals. It's one of the most important things in our curriculum is for a student to explain their full thought process from beginning to end, trying to get us to understand why they made the choices they did. We have something called the big project. We'll talk about that here towards the end. It's actually kind of cool. And then we end up having some tests for them to take either through Canvas or other outside applications. But the first one I want to talk about really is just using CROCODOC for math. Usually for CROCODOC, it's pretty simple. The nice benefit for here is it's integrated into the document. The students actually don't have to download to see my markups. They can see it instantly on their web browser. They can see what's going on and how things are working within there. So it's all integrated into one location. There's two methods I use when using CROCODOC. One of the things that bug me the most is how many times do I have to write -1 wrong answer? So you get to that point of like how many times do I have to type and type and type and type. So an example I have here is from one of my other teachers. He teaches the drafting portion of the engineering program. And so he creates a Word document that has all the possible wrong answers, all the possible things that are common across there. And what he simply does is have on one screen his PDF pulled up from within CROCODOC, and then on the other screen, this Word document. And he just copies and pastes in all the things that he needs to have so he can get through it a lot quicker. You can see that he also has it broken down into what he's specifically grading at the time, whether it's designs, whether it's dimensions, views, or something along those lines. For me, I use something called hotkeys on my Mac. I've programmed it so I don't have to write -1 wrong all the time. Instead, what I do is I hit exclamation mark A, and it literally finishes the rest of the sentence for me. And just on the Mac side, it's really easy to program out. Unfortunately, on the PC side, you have to download this free macro writer. And then you can set it up in there, and it just takes a little bit longer than on the Mac side. So I have a video to kind of show you what this looks like, and hopefully it'll play out. So this is obviously just going through into SpeedGrader. And what ends up happening is it will pull up in that new document. We'll quickly pull up the student assignment. This is what the assignment typically looks like. Student has to draw out whatever we're talking about in the assignment so we understand that they know what type of class level they're working on in this. So I'll actually check those answers, see what their raw information was, and then I'll get into the answer here. So typically how my assignments work for the math side is this problem here for number 2 is actually worth 3 points. 1 point for the formula, 1 point for the work, and 1 point for the answer. Because what I'm working on with my students the entire time is the answer is not the most important side in engineering. It's about how you actually got to that answer. And the example I give them is actually with NASA. NASA has done a wonderful job of slamming probes into Mars a couple of times at 3 meters a second instead of landing at 3 feet per second. And because somebody didn't show their work and didn't realize they crossed units, it becomes important for them to understand that this actually happens in real life and that they need to know how to do this. So I'll quickly go through. Let me hit play. Here we go. So what ends up happening, I'll just go up into the simple comments, go to the text. Let's see. So obviously I found something wrong here finally. So I just go in there, pick the color text, and on this one they forgot their units. So -1 half unit. So I just hit exclamation mark half unit, or exclamation mark unit. And so what's nice about doing it this way is you just have to be careful of what keystrokes you use. You need to make sure that you choose a keystroke that's not common. Very rarely are you ever going to type exclamation mark A or exclamation mark U. Mainly because unless you're coding, that's not a common thing that's going to be popping up. So just make sure you pick out a simple way there. Now for labs, I actually use my Windows Surface now. I bought a Surface. It's actually a wonderful document for me to use. Typically on this method, I utilize the Canvas bulk download and bulk upload. So I'll actually go in, bulk download all my assignments, open it up in this app that I found for the Surface called Drawboard PDF, and be able to edit it from there. The benefits here is I can take these assignments anywhere. I don't have to be on Wi-Fi. I can sit there, download real quick, especially if I'm going to be out and about, whether it's camping or whether it's doing other activities with the school. I'm able to actually just sit down, grade through, and not have to worry about having a Wi-Fi connection at that point. Also, CROCODOC doesn't always have all the little tools I want to play with. So this app gives me a lot more robust options in circling, pen colors, highlighting, very much more available to us. And the nice thing is, I don't have, because I use a bulk download and upload, how I used to do this, which I quickly learned was the worst way to do it, is I would download one student's, mark it up, re-upload. And that just took a lot of time out of my day. So this is kind of what it looks like, and it's going to be on my Surface here. So I'm going to go into the bulk download here. So you'll see download submissions. And we'll go through this process to download, and it's going to end up in a folder down here. If it didn't show up, I'm going to hit it again. And apparently it's not showing my entire screen there. But at that point, what's important is it's downloaded to your computer as a zip file. So you need to extract that file out of there so that it all ends up in the same place. And that's what I'm doing here, is extracting it. The next thing that you need to remember is when it's done extracting, do not ever change any of the names that are associated with the file. It's a huge, I think it's like over 128 characters. It's a mailbox address. It allows when you re-upload for it to end up in the right place. So this is the folder I have. I'm going to open up a student's assignment here. And this is what the PDF annotator looks like. You can see what some of the assignments looks like. Same general assignment here at this point. I can zoom in. Up in the right here, you can actually see all the different little options in there. So I have different pen colors automatically set. So I have 3 different pens I can quickly switch through at different thicknesses, highlighters, and I can go through this entire option of trying to decide which way. Highlighting, it recognizes any of the text that I have written. So I'll show you that right there. And then I can quickly switch back to my real pen and simply write in there real neat, real nice what's going on. This provides me to give more feedback than simply saying no units are shown. It allows me to actually have that communication a little bit differently with the student. And let's just show. When you're done and all your files are saved, once again, make sure you don't change your file name. You need to zip that folder up. Once that folder is zipped, you can actually go back onto Canvas. And underneath where you just downloaded that assignment, you'll actually see a new window pop up called Re-Upload Submissions. I go in there, I select the file, and all the files get pushed to the student as a comment. I don't have to do anything. Once I've selected this, and it's pretty obvious when it actually works because it says, hey, everything's there and shows you what the window looks like, so I'll wait for it to catch up to me. And it shows that every one of these students received that submission. And now it's a comment. They have something they can download and they can look at. They have something they can learn from at that point and really begin to understand what happened and what's going on. Does that make sense, everybody? It's really kind of a nice, easy way to do this. So I've gone from very simple, quick, with just CROCODOC and just typing in there, to doing an assignment outside and pushing in bulk load up and down. Our English teachers have really fallen in love with this bulk upload and download just because it makes their lives so much easier. Like I said, there's a couple notes. The assignment does appear as a comment. Don't change that file name. There's a lot of apps out there that want to change the file name when you hit save. They're like, oh, I want to add my extension, say UPad, onto it. You have to make sure it doesn't change that file name. Otherwise, it will never find its way back to the correct place because that is its mailbox address. And make sure anytime you have that folder done and edited that you go back and you just re-zip that back up. Otherwise, when you go to submit it, it's not going to submit it. Yes?
Okay, so I see that you could see your student's handwriting. How is that a PDF file that they upload? How do they get that up to Canvas? How do they get that PDF file to Canvas?
Okay, so how do the students actually turn in the assignments to me? So what actually happens is I have all my documents as a PDF that are sitting out there. So I put it in my files as a PDF. They download that. They use some annotation program. We have a few that we use at our school. We have UPad, and this is iPads. UPad, iAnnotate, PDF Expert, and we also still allow students to find ones that are their own. What they do is they just submit that assignment to the Canvas app. They need to make sure they flatten the PDF or say with annotations. Usually if it doesn't come through, they forgot to click that button, and then it just gets pushed out to me, and I see it almost immediately. Okay. Now, one of the coolest things we actually do in the assignment is actually a robots. I teach coding. I teach C++, and this unit in the past has frustrated me so much. What ends up happening is the students, how I used to do this is I'd use the rubric, the speed grader app. And I would go around and I'd watch the student run their robot, and I would quickly grade it, look at their code, and then move on. Problem is I became the bottleneck. I was always the problem because students would have issues, and I'd be like, oh, hey, you forgot a semicolon, and I'd walk away real quick because I have to go grade somebody else's assignment. I wouldn't have that time to sit down with them and have that conversation and say, hey, Silvers, I'd really, really like to see if I could compare this sensor to this sensor, but not this sensor. So how do I actually code that? And so now I get to actually sit down with that student and look at what they're doing and spend time with them in a more timely manner. And so what they actually do is they create a document now. They use a keynote. What ends up happening is they use their camera or video. They videotape their robot running, proving it works. They insert their code into the keynote, and they insert, using a picture, their program sketch to explain to me. These are all requirements of the coding process for us. And so the students have to show every aspect. They have to explain it to me, and they have to prove that their robot works. And it's really kind of an interesting thing. Benefit here is I'm no longer standing next to that kid having to make sure that their robot works perfectly. Instead, what I get to do is sit with that student and say, hey, your code is off here. And what I've noticed recently is when I'm working with one student, it's no longer one student. There was one point this year when I was working with one person, I looked behind me and I had 10 other kids surrounding me asking more questions, and we went further than my lectures went. The lectures or conversations we had, some students just want to get the assignment done because they're not really into coding, and that's fine. While others want to go really, really deep. And doing this method allows that to actually happen and begin to see a little bit more. So this is what I would actually see on my side and how I would do this. They submit the code as a separate file, and they submit the keynote here. And so what ends up happening is I have to download the keynote, so I do have to have Wi-Fi, and at the same time I can open up the code. So here's the code. And I'll quickly read through this, looking for programmer notes, making sure the syntax is right, making sure there's no errors, and making sure that they've programmed everything that I've asked them to program. And I'll go through the rubric at this point and put in different grades for those rubrics. There's a point for pseudocode, programmer notes, all that stuff. Here's the sketch. So they just make a simple sketch. This one was a little overcomplicated. And then they actually show it. So this is one of my students.
Performing the first labyrinth challenge.
And so the reason he has to, this is his video on his iPad, he has to show me this and be in the video so I don't have to worry about anybody claiming this video and this video are theirs, but it's really not. And that came with some experience. And so basically I just verify everything works, and he's just showed me the robot works. I mean, if you really think about this, I've just eliminated a huge portion of my day of being the roadblock in a student's learning experience and job. Yes, sir?
Can students upload multiple documents to a single assignment? Can they upload a video and a keynote and a document?
Yes, they can upload everything. They, depending on where they're looking or what thing, they may only see one or two assignments there, but you see the full history of everything they submitted, date, time of day, everything comes through. It's an amazing setup that they actually have now on that. So you can see that obviously I went in here real quick with the rubric, and I can add comments into there why they didn't do so well on that section or why they did well on the other sections. So I've mentioned this a couple of times. It's more of the English side of engineering. In fact, if there were English teachers in here, they would be really upset with me because we teach, it's technical writing, so it's actually third person past tense, which is what you're never supposed to write in unless you're doing technical writing. So this is a group assignment. What this document is a standalone document. I want in this document for a student to prove why they came up with the design they came up with. What's really cool about this class is they can make, say, a Rube Goldberg, and it doesn't work at all. Yet they still can get an A on the project. Because failure in engineering is okay. 90% of all engineering projects fail. That's the reality of it. Only 10% is what you're holding in your hands or walking around with. So this is a group assignment. So what ends up happening is we have a couple different ways that they can do this. Pages, if one person is going to write it. We also started piloting 365 this year. And this is our collaborative document. We do have Google Docs, and that does work to a degree. The problem we run into is it doesn't like images, it doesn't like charts, it doesn't like all the stuff that I want in my document. So they can use the 365 on their iPad or on the computer. I don't personally care. Give them whatever option is available to them. There's 3 methods of feedback I actually give to them. First one is simply a rubric. This is the simplest rubric I give. It's just what it is, and it's blurry, a maximum point column, a minimum point column, and I could just make some comments. And go a little further where I can break down all the points. And on this one, this is my most complicated one because on top of it, I actually give the details of what my expectation is in here. I'm getting to the point where I no longer have to have worksheets accompanying with every assignment because the rubric is going to have all of that data in there. In this section, this is my expectation. And there's no miscommunication at that point. It's there word for word, and they say, you never told me. It's right here. Okay, great. The other one you kind of see, using tablet annotation or CROCODOC, I go through. This is actually with my Surface, so I'm circling things. Problem is I'm trying to go through a lot of these. These documents get anywhere between 25 and 50 pages in length. So to sit there and write my full thoughts just takes a lot of time. So I kind of came up with a different way. I started doing what I call visual walkthroughs. I use a program called Ink2Go, and I walk the student through their assignment. So here's what it looks like. I submit this video file to them, and they're able to go back and play it. What Ink2Go does is it's a screen capture program. I put my pretty little face in there because it caused more interaction between me and them, better connection, best practice kind of thing. And I can walk through that paper with them. I can scroll up and down my screen so you can see me in the upper right. There's my markups, so I don't need to be as specific in my markups because now that markup is for me to talk to them about. I can sit there and say, hey, this section you really didn't do so well. Here's why you lost the points here. Here's what happened here. This time I'd really like to see this. And the students this year have just been amazed at the amount of information they're getting back. And we've gone, like I said, from those simple conversations of like 1.2.2, but what about this? What about this circumstance? So it's really kind of changed a lot of what's going on within the class. This is the one that I'm most proud of. This is something very unique to New Trier. Even with the Project Lead the Way program that we teach in that, this is very unique to New Trier. It is a big project. What ends up happening is this is a 4 to 6 week project. My role in this is very little. My role is more or less a guide and requiring a weekly meeting with the students. It is student-led and student-driven. I picked 2 group leaders, and they build this. The one you're looking at, this was at a competition at Northwestern. They wanted to try a STEM competition and see how they did. They made a chocolate maker. Basically, the idea is they suck molten chocolate out of a machine or out of a bowl, put it into a mold, cool it, eject it, put sprinkles on it, and then bag it. And it all has to be automated, no human interaction. They have to do the full coding, full machine design, and everything else around it. So there's 3 things that they need to actually produce for me. One is a machine. One is an individual design brief for each section of the machine, and the leaders put a larger design brief together. These get rather large and hefty. And they also make a video to show me their thought process and how their machine works. So all the graded items here is, the working machine is just a rubric based. It's only worth 100 points. The reason I bring this up is because what's coming up here in a minute or two. They do a design brief, that big design brief we just talked about. That's only worth about 290 points for this project. The movie itself is only worth 50 points. But they also owe me a weekly project update. So just like in the real world, they have to answer to their boss at least once a week. They have to write where they were, what they did, what they're planning for next week, and we have to agree on the goals that they have to meet. And that's only worth probably a grand total of like 30 or 40 points for the entire 6-week project. We also do weekly participation points. 500 points. So you can see what the important part and what I'm really grading and what my real expectation here is. So how this works for participation is we use 2 methods. First, I have what are called silks. They're seniors who have had the class, and they're basically my TA. Me, I share a OneNote with them through 365, and we wander around the classroom the entire time during this project. We take notes about what each student is doing. Hey, you were on Facebook. Hey, you were texting. Hey, you were really good at brainstorming and taking other people's ideas and getting people working really well. And so we can see that live to each other. At the same time, I'm also using Magic Marker. Just as a quick way to upload to a CSV how well each student did in a group. I might watch a group for the day and specifically mark up or down how they're performing with their group. Are they working well with their group? Are they being active members, or are they just sitting there like a lump? So how I communicate this back to them is through 3 methods, and each one is a little bit more severe here. First is through rubrics. Just the easiest way is just give them the point value. In there, I might make comments. They might ask, well, why did I lose 5 points? Well, you spent 20% of the time on Facebook. I don't know, but I don't think your group is worried about Facebook at this point. And then if it really gets severe, I'll actually sit down with the student or the group and say, what's going on? And we have that guided conversation. This is so late in the year that it's a very open conversation with the students about how they're doing, what they're doing, and then even the group members chime in on the whole process and what they're thinking. We also do, so that's kind of the highlight there. But we also do flip videos. There's a lot of sections where I'd rather spend more time in lab and answering questions. One of our hardest units is statics. The students actually calculate all the forces through a bridge system to determine when and where it's going to fail. First method is just using quizzes in Canvas. It's what I currently use. What ends up happening is grading is obviously automatic. What I'll end up doing is I will embed the video into the assignment or into the quiz and time it. I want students to make sure that they're on there, they're not having their buddies do it. So they'll have 30 minutes for a 25-minute video to get it completely done. Once again, I use Ink2Go to capture my video, post it up on YouTube or other methods, and have that video housed out there. They can access it at any point, but the quiz is only open for a certain amount of time. It looks something like this. So if they were to take it, you can see that the quiz questions are there. They can play the video within there so they don't actually have to exit the quiz and be able to go through that. The new one that I'm looking at trying to use is Microsoft 365 Mix. Basically, it's an external app that's coming in, and since it looks like there's some more collaboration going on and open source between Canvas and Microsoft with 365, this is about to become really useful for me. Ink2Go is like $20 to do all of this stuff and record it. Mix is free. It comes with PowerPoint, so I don't need to spend any money anymore and be able to do all my recording from in there. I simply just embed the video. It looks something like this on the inside, and they're able to go through, answer quiz questions are in there. It's actually kind of cool. I haven't used it a lot. This is where I'm going to be going this summer and trying to learn more. And finally, so some best practices here, some takeaways on this. Use some videos to get rid of the simple things, like how do you actually submit assignments. Just do that stuff for your students. Put it out there so you demo it once, and then if they go, I don't know how to do this, hey, the video's right there. Just go watch it again, walk through it. That way you can eliminate the easy questions and get to the more complicated questions. Students should feel a difference when it's digital grading. I would have never believed I said that. It should feel different. My guys have reported numerous times they feel like they're more in control. They feel like it's more of an open conversation about how they did. They feel like they're getting too much information at moments on how to perform better the next time. So there should be. Listen to your students as they comment about rubrics, not being able to get access, not understanding what you're trying to do. They are a great lens to look through. With that said also, make sure you use your test student in Canvas. They do a great, you can test drive every aspect, every quiz, every assignment turn in, so that you can actually see what the student process actually looks like. Okay? Don't lose this human connection. As much as I thought going full digital grading was going to make me lose human connection, it has actually increased that human connection. It has allowed me to get past the simple, you got this wrong, to the, hey, let's sit down and really have a conversation about this. And I'm able to take the time to sit down and not have to worry about 40-minute periods and I'm out the door. So that's pretty much what I got. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear them. Okay. Well, apparently we're out of time. I'm sorry. If you have questions, come on up. I'll answer them. So.